Ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker is somebody that went straight to my heart, not only because he's from Sweden and in a wonderful country, but definitely because of the great work he's done in advising companies in developing better cultures. In his writings, in his speaking, in all of the customer relationship he has on the NGO side and on the corporate side, he is somebody who's making a difference in his work, and you will see very soon that he's very passionate about it on the topic of leadership, of course, and how to overcome your company's greatest culture challenges. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to the stage Tobias Sturesson.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So good to be here with you all in Helsinki and for you watching online. So now, let me take you back to 15 years ago. In 2008, I was watching an investigative program on Swedish television. While her image was blurred and her voice distorted to protect her anonymity, I watched my mother tell a national broadcast audience how she, as a member of a Christian community that had turned into a religious cult, became isolated, demonized, and ultimately tried to end her own life as a way to escape the terror and the trauma. I grew up in that community, learned to revere its manipulative founder, and became a part of its destructive culture, even as it tore our family apart. How could an organization that had seemed to be driven by a noble mission turn into something so toxic? And how could I, who saw myself as an ethical and values-driven leader, become complicit in psychological abuse? These questions are why I'm here tonight. They have driven and compelled me to dedicate my life to advocating for healthier cultures. Over the last several years, our team at Heart Management has supported hundreds of leaders who needed to overcome critical culture challenges. And while I'm very glad to say that few companies turn into religious cults, we are experiencing an epidemic of unhealthy culture like a heart disease in the workplace today. We laugh at it in shows like The Office. And I think we're appalled by it and the countless stories of unhealthy and destructive culture we read about almost every day. So my question for you here tonight is, do your company suffer from cultural heart disease? What we should be hearing is the haunting sound of acute decompensated heart failure. I think we're going to hear the sound soon. It's potentially life-threatening if left untreated. Cultural heart disease, not violence or war, is the #1 cause of death globally, and yet few of us pay adequate attention to our heart health. As I've been writing a book on the culture challenges, I've interviewed numerous researchers, senior executives, and whistleblowers to understand how reputable and highly successful companies could end up in crisis and scandal, and how, like an impending heart failure, the leadership seldom saw it coming. I've discovered that while senior leaders are often laser-focused, and rightly so, on improving financial performance, being attractive to external stakeholders, and mitigating reputational risk, we often fail to pay enough attention to our cultural health, even though, like our heart, it can help us thrive even in chaos or destroy tremendous company value and wreck people's lives. Cultural heart disease breeds distrust, division, disengagement, and dysfunction. Researchers at MIT found toxic culture to be the main driver behind the Great Resignation. And if I would ask for a show of hands here, I'm sure that there are many of you who have personal and perhaps even heartbreaking experiences of cultural heart disease in the workplace. So if the problem is so great and so widespread, how come we so often fail to deal with it? To understand and answer that question, we're going to explore 2 myths that leaders love to believe even though they keep us blind and paralyzed. Myth number 1, the health illusion. Just as we will often assume that our physical heart is healthy, it's easy to assume that we are a good organization with a healthy culture and great values. whether because we have Nordic values, a noble mission, or have won an employer branding award. However, researchers like Anton Brunsell have found that we often have hyper-illusions about how ethical we are. While so many companies today claim that their values permeate all behaviors at the company, employees don't know the values, they don't understand what they mean, or they regularly see their leaders act in conflict with them. Assuming that we're healthy will lead us to stay oblivious to the need to check our cultural health and use our values as a shield to protect against criticism. So if we then start to experience the symptoms of cultural heart disease, we'll often fall prey to myth number 2, the bad apple theory. We'll blame the issue on a bad apple, a destructive employee, a rogue engineer, or perhaps a corrupt leader. However, culture is always co-created. There was someone who knew but stayed silent, someone who was told but didn't act. Blaming bad apples will lead us to seek scapegoats but overlook cultural heart disease and avoid taking ownership, which keeps us paralyzed. So when companies do wake up to the need to address cultural heart disease, it's often relegated to HR and treated as a project that can be fixed with a new set of values or perhaps an event with an inspiring speaker. However, 85% of these initiatives fail miserably, and I'm sure all of us in here have experienced that personally as well. But what if I told you that there's a much more effective way to overcome cultural heart disease and transform your cultural health? Let me introduce you to the world's healthiest person, Mr. Charles Eugster. At 68, he took up bodybuilding. At 93, he took up sprinting. So who wants to know his secret? Oh, everyone, that's good. Charles told Vice magazine that people don't realize that you can have a beach body at 90. I'm living proof that if you eat right and exercise properly, you can be that guy at any age. And then he said how 70-year-old women would turn their heads as he passed by on the beach. Charles understood what is evident to everyone in this room and watching online, that it's habits, not short-term initiatives or Instagram posts, that are the keys to health and resilience. And the same is, of course, true about our cultural health. Through our work and extensive research, we've discovered that just like the heart has 4 chambers, there are 4 powerful leadership habits that will transform your cultural health. They're simple, but they're hard. They will challenge your comfort, and you can't relegate them to someone else. You have to, as the theme of Nordic Business Forum says, be change. Habit number 1, get humble. Clients saw a need to build a more courageous and innovative culture. A cultural health analysis revealed that destructive leadership years ago still caused fear and silence. We told the leadership that cultural heart disease doesn't heal just because time passes. You must address it. So reluctantly, they decided to get humble. In a company-wide meeting, the CEO addressed the destructive leadership of the past and said that what happened was not okay, nor was our silence. On behalf of our company, I want to apologize and ensure we don't ever allow that again. As soon as she finished, employees rushed forward to tell their stories. Some couldn't hold back tears, grateful that finally the deafening silence was broken. We will all act in ways that conflicts with our values. And what we do in those moments matters much more than we think. Getting humble allows us to course correct quickly and restore trust and integrity. Habit number 2, get clear. As the Home Depot CEO, Frank Blake led a remarkable turnaround at the Fortune 50 company by making the value of excellent customer service clear to the company again. He empowered sales associates with the needed tools and freedom. And every week, he would take the time to write 100 personal notes to employees excelling in customer service. Frank told me that he learned that when it comes to culture, you don't get what you measure, you get what you celebrate. Habit number 3, get integrity. Too often, there's a mismatch between the values we claim and the signals we send, which makes our values worthless. But on the other hand, I've worked with senior executives who've done the hard work of integrating their values even when it's costly. Like Anna Romberg, a Finnish national and executive vice president at a global medtech company, who they made a commitment to make responsible leadership the cornerstone of their business. And they're integrated hard conversations about values dilemmas into the conversations on every level of the company. That quest for integrity is the foundation for a healthy culture. Habit number 4, that's listening. Are you aware of how your power might silence others? Research shows that we often overestimate our listening ability, but we underestimate how hard it is to raise concerns. To sustain a healthy culture, we must solicit concerns and create safety for people to speak up and get a diverse perspective. 10 years after watching that fateful TV program, I was invited to help an international NGO that was facing a public scandal that had unveiled severe cultural heart disease and led to a crisis of trust. But instead of deflecting blame, this leadership chose to get humble, get clear, get integrity, and get listening. Though the process was challenging, it led to a remarkable transformation in the organization, and it gave me unshakable hope that restoring cultural health is possible. After 2 years at a psychiatric ward, my mother mended her heart. She became a healthy culture advocate as a leader in the public sector, and I'm so glad to say that she's been one of the biggest supporters of our mission. So now, I have a challenge for all of you. You have power. You can choose courageous humility over pride and fear. You can make a difference. Make it your mission to become a cultural healthy advocate and care for the heart. Imagine what a tremendous difference we could make if we would decide to be change. Thank you.
Wonderful. We have a question for you.
Thank you.
A question. You're not getting off that easily. We checked the Slido. We didn't have questions. So do be active at home. Also, please do send some questions. Any members of the jury with a question? I would have a question. Can I do that? Yeah? Oh, thank you so much. I've thought about your mother's story ever since we've met. I think it's one of the most compelling things I've ever heard, and the mission you have as a speaker and author and consultant is so laudable. Of the 4 elements of the heart that you mentioned, what were the early signals of extremely bad health of that organization, that toxic organization your mother and your family was a member of?
Great question. I think one of the biggest, and I think even though we're in Finland here, and I think we have maybe like in Sweden, a lot of kind of consensus, we're maybe not super hierarchical, but I think one of the biggest issues is silence. It's when people cannot speak up. And I mean, I've seen, even though that was a toxic cult, I've seen the same things at Karolinska with the Macchiarini and the whistleblowers who tried to show the issue but were silent. So I think when you have that sense of silence where people cannot speak, where you cannot bring up concerns, when you cannot have a different opinion, I think that's probably one of the most early signs.
Early signs. Mm. I think we all join, you can all join me in sending our very warm regards to your mother.
Thank you. Thank you
so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Great job. Thank you. Thank you.